If you want to avoid a terrible paint job on IKEA furniture that peels and flakes, you're going to want to watch this video. Hey there, it's Christina from the DIYmommy.com. I have been painting IKEA furniture for years now, and in today's video, I want to show you all of my tricks, hacks, and tips on how to make your paint job last. So I'm going to talk about everything from sanding, to priming, to painting, to sealing. Let's get started. To begin, you might be wondering if IKEA furniture can be painted. The answer is yes. I have painted several pieces over the last few years, and most of them have lasted. It's extremely important to make sure you prepare your furniture piece properly. If you do that, you're going to have success with painting IKEA furniture. So now IKEA has all kinds of material types. They have wood, like solid pine. They also have MDF and laminate, which is not real wood, but yes, it can still be painted. For example, these stall shoe cabinets that I painted in my hallway are a laminate material, and I was able to paint them successfully. 3 years later, they have lasted with minimal chipping and scratching. So how do you prep IKEA furniture to be painted? To begin, you can remove any drawers or hardware from your furniture piece. If you haven't assembled your piece yet, you may even want to consider painting it before you assembled it. And that's what I did when I painted this TV cabinet, and I used it as a bench in the entryway of our little lake house. Sometimes that's easier. Sometimes you might just want to assemble it first and put it together. This is kind of a personal preference, and it really does depend on the piece that you're painting. If the piece does have drawers, I do find it certainly easier to remove the drawers from the frame so that you can paint the drawers and the frame separately. No matter what material your piece is made of, whether it is the solid wood, MDF, or laminate, I do find that all of your IKEA pieces will need a good scuff sanding. And by scuff sanding, I mean just a light sand throughout the whole piece, front, back, top, bottom, inside, outside, with about a 220 grit sandpaper. And what that does is roughen up the surface a little bit so that it can accept the primer better, so that it can accept the paint better, and everything just sticks. And this is really your goal when you're painting this type of furniture. You want that paint to stick. You don't want it to be chipping and peeling off in a year or two. You can use a sanding block, or you can use a power sander. I've done both. Both have been successful. It's completely up to you. And once you're done giving your piece a scuff sand, just wipe it with a tack cloth. So a tack cloth is a sticky cloth that gets rid of any of that fine dust or debris. If you don't have a tack cloth, a microfiber cloth will also work to get rid of any of that dust. Now that you've scuff sanded, now that you've wiped, the next step is priming. So which sort of primer should you use on IKEA furniture? First of all, primer is extremely important if you're painting MDF or laminate furniture. That's that shiny, glossy material that is not real wood. However, if you're painting a solid wood IKEA piece, it's not glossy, it's a little bit rough in texture, matte in texture. You might be able to get away with just the sanding and then right away to a paint product. You might want to do a little bit of a patch test on your piece to see if you put paint directly on the wood, let it dry, let it cure, does it stay? That might be wise, especially if you're painting a larger piece and you're spending lots of time on it. However, again, if you're using that laminate piece, that MDF piece, primer is very important. I like to use what's called a bonding primer, and you can find bonding primer almost anywhere in almost any brand of paint. I've used both Cloverdale brand, and I've also used the Bear bonding primer. I will link both of those products down in the description box below. Just look for a primer that says bonding primer, and it's going to say somewhere on the can that it sticks to hard to paint surfaces like glass, metal, etc. That's that kind of sticky primer you want, and it's water-based, so it's really easy to clean up and it's really easy to work with. Many of my fellow DIYers have reported that Zinsser primer has worked really well for them. I will link that below. I've never tried it. I've just always had bonding primer on hand, and that's worked perfectly well for me. So primer is that secret ingredient for your painting project that's gonna really help everything stick, not chip, not peel. Do one good coat of primer, let that dry, and then also let it cure. So look on the paint can, look on the primer can, and see how long the brand recommends for that to sit before you put a second coat on. And if you're like me and you're impatient, this is a really hard step, but this will also ensure that your paint is going to stick and last a long time. So in my experience, I usually have to wait a full 24 to 48 hours before I go ahead and do the next step, which is the painting. Some fellow DIYers have done 2 coats of primer. In my experience, I found that 1, as long as it's a good bonding primer, as long as you wait, works perfectly well. What kind of paint should you use for IKEA furniture? So now I've used a variety of different paints over the years, and I've had success with a few different types of paint. So you don't necessarily have to just use one type of paint. You could use chalk style paint. So Annie Sloan chalk paint, chalked paint by Rust-Oleum, Fusion mineral paint. Again, though, if that piece is MDF, I still recommend doing the primer and then the chalk style paint, even if the chalk style paint brand doesn't recommend it, just because you want that extra stickiness, that adhesion. I've had success with chalk paint. You could use just a regular interior latex paint, and this is the kind of paint that I've used mostly for my IKEA furniture painting projects. I used it for my sideboard in my living room. I used it for my bench in our little lake house. I used it for the bathroom vanity in our little lake house. I even used it for our hallway. And I used Bear's paint and primer in one product, and that seemed to have really great coverage if you do it over the primer, nice and sticky. So I find that just regular interior latex paint paired with a good primer is gonna last you a long time. I'm a big fan of Bear because it's easily accessible. I know it's accessible to a lot of you too. I've used Bear Dynasty and Bear Scuff Defense. Those have both been successful and lasted a long time for me. Should you use paint rollers or paint brushes or a paint sprayer? What's the best thing? It honestly depends on what's accessible to you, what's available to you. I personally prefer a smoother finish when I'm using interior latex paint. So a paint sprayer is fantastic, but I know a lot of you don't have one. So then I'd probably opt for a foam roller, and that's gonna give you that nice smooth finish that you might want on your piece of furniture. And then just use a nice little angled 2-inch brush to get in any corners. My favorite paint sprayer is the Wagner Flexio 5000. I will link that below. Makes things so fast. If you know how to clean it and take care of it, if you can invest in a paint sprayer, oh my goodness, it's so fantastic just to get everything done and get that nice, even, smooth finish. Fantastic for furniture, fantastic for exterior walls, interior walls, etc. But again, if you don't have the paint sprayer, second favorite tool would be a foam roller. It's gonna get you that nice, smooth, even finish. Do you need to seal your piece? In my experience, if you scuff sand, prime, paint with a good quality interior latex paint and primer in one product, no, you don't need to do any sort of sealing. If you've done a good job waiting between your coats as well, you don't use the furniture until the furniture is completely dry, completely cure, you should be able to get away with no type of top coat. However, if you think that you're going to be quite rough on your furniture piece, say for example, you're painting an IKEA kitchen table, you know there's gonna be lots of scraping on the surface, lots of kids moving plates and bowls and things around, you might wanna do a top coat. And what I'd recommend for that would be something like a polyurethane. So Varathane has the crystal clear top coats. I will link those in the description box below. Once the paint is completely dry, do 1 to 2 coats of that, and then you're gonna have a really nice hard surface. Other than that, in my experience, not really necessary to do a top coat. The other exception might be if you use a chalk style paint, you might wanna do a top coat of wax, just to make sure you seal up that paint and it's easier to wipe. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope it gave you some inspiration to paint your next piece of IKEA furniture. Let me know down in those comments below if you've ever tried painting IKEA furniture. Were you successful? Were you not successful? Let me know. And if you want to see more IKEA decor ideas, IKEA hacks, I'm gonna leave some right up here.